Good day, everyone, and welcome to Breaking Boundaries. I am your host, Talumba Katawala, Employee Brand Manager at Technip Energies. On today's episode, we welcome Caroline Coton-Tranape, Assistant R&D Director. Caroline is an ambitious chemical engineer who graduated from the National School of Chemical Industries in Nancy, France. With a strong interest for sustainability and innovation, she is passionate about creating a more circular economy and has implemented with her teams several initiatives to reduce the environmental impact of certain industries. Through her research, she's constantly seeking new solutions to enhance the sustainability of industrial processes. Her dedication has been an example for her team and has allowed the company to make great strides in sustainability and innovation. Hello, Caroline. How are you today?
I'm very good. Thank you. And you?
Doing fantastic. I'm having a wonderful day and so excited to get to know you and get to know the work that you do. So, for me and for the rest of the listeners, can you give us a bit of your background and how you went from Lille in France to Boston and somehow passed by Doha?
I started my career as a process engineer in France. And I really liked that because it was in a chemical plant and it was very applied and solving problems really fast with really fast implementation. After a few years, I had the opportunity to go to Qatar, to Doha, and I found a job in research and development to evaluate new emissions monitoring technologies. This was also very interesting, a very different field, a very different environment. But I thought it was a little more political and involved a lot of partnerships, so it was a little slower. After that, I had another opportunity to move to the United States, and I started working for Technip Energies a little bit by chance in 2013 as a process engineer in the Boston office. I moved to the research center in 2015 because they needed help with a lot of the programs that they had. It was supposed to be a short-term assignment, but I enjoyed it so much that I asked to stay longer, and I'm still there. As I was gaining more experience and more insight into all the research and development programs that we do here in the research center, I was also taking more responsibilities and more of a leading role. And I was promoted assistant director in 2021. And now I oversee and coordinate all the R&D programs executed here in Weymouth, and both for internal programs and also for external clients.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting trajectory. So, what is your focus at the moment? What are you working on right now?
So our focus is really applied research and development for the company and clients. And our new direction, really, since Technip Energies was spun off, has been the energy transition. So we're doing a lot of programs in green chemistry, sustainability, and circularity. We have the opportunity to cooperate with a lot of the different offices for Technip Energies, so
Right.
with Zoetermeer and Frankfurt and Claremont and others. And we also do third-party work for external clients.
So you mentioned in the beginning that you ended up at Technip Energies by chance. And can you tell me how did this come into your plate? How did you become passionate about this? How did you choose this path? Was it an automatic choice? Was there some influence? How did you end up here?
Uh, that wasn't a straight path, that's for sure. I think I got interested in chemistry and chemical engineering in high school. I had a very passionate chemistry teacher, and he showed me that chemistry isn't that complicated and made me want to really understand how everything is made. Also, my grandfather was an engineer, and
Oh.
as a little girl, I was always amazed as how many things he knew and how he could fix everything and understand how everything was working. So I think that's kind of what started me on that path.
Did you have to choose between either working in research and academia, or coming to work in the private sector, or joining an industry like the one you're part of today? Was there a battle, an internal battle between you? Was there some influence, external influence that kind of geared your career choices?
Yeah, I agree. It's a choice that young engineers are faced with when they start working. And I don't think there's a bad choice. I think really you learn something valuable, whether you start in academia or in the industry. To be honest, for me, it's been a series of accidental opportunities. Um, and I think each time I found a new opportunity, I learned new things about what it was like to work in a chemical plant or in a research center or in an engineering office. And that's really what led me here right now.
Mm, right. So in my when I close my eyes and I think about you and lab and R&D, I always imagine something really complex and innovative, and so I'm wondering, is there any groundbreaking or out of the ordinary projects that you've worked on in the past that has marked you, and what was the most exciting thing about that?
Yes. So what's interesting in our research center is it's not what you imagine. Like it's not just a
Okay.
lab and people in white coats.
Yeah.
It's more industrial than that. We run pilot plants, and I think a very exciting project we worked on last year was with this Swiss company called On, and they do running shoes, and they were looking into making sustainable running shoes out of carbon emissions. And
Wow.
they partnered with 4 or 5 different companies, so there were several steps. And our role here in the research center was to make bioethylene using our hummingbird technology. So that's a technology that Technip Energies own, and that makes ethylene out of ethanol, so from a sustainable feedstock. And the bioethylene that we made here in our pilot plant in the lab was then transformed into an EVA foam. That's the polymer that was used by On to make the midsole of their shoe that they called Cloud Prime. And
Wow.
the other parts of the shoes were also made sustainably by other partners. And it was a very challenging project, especially in the middle of the pandemic with all the supply chains issue. But I think we successfully did our part, and it proved that carbon emissions can be captured and used to make consumer products, and that the hummingbird technology is a very valuable technology for Technip Energies.
That is so, so cool. Now I need to own these shoes, huh? So, so what else do you do at the research center in the energy transition field? What else are you able to share with the audience today that you're working on?
Yeah, so we have several projects in circularity or in reduction of CO2 emission fields. An interesting technology that we've been working on is based on the circular economy. So that's a way to eliminate waste and limit the use of natural resources by reusing, repurposing, and recycling. And the project that we were involved in here at the lab involved a chemical recycling solution of polystyrene in collaboration with a company called Agelix. And they have a technology that can depolymerize the polystyrene from packaging, for example, or construction materials,
Hmm.
back to a styrene oil. And our role was to purify it so that it could be used again to make new polymers, so new plastics, new packaging, new
Wow.
construction materials. So we can really go from the styrene to the polymer, back to the styrene to the polymer. So that's how you create that circular economy. And then this is now an all-in-one solution licensed by Technip Energies that's called True Styrenics.
Wow. That's super cool. I think I finally get the concept of circular economy after your explanation. No, that's fantastic. That's really exciting. And so, um, with all the experience in R&D, but in manufacturing and process, do you believe that technology and engineering in general can make a completely sustainable world a reality?
Absolutely. Yes.
Wow.
Now, it will not happen like overnight. But I really believe that with all the research and development that's being done right now to make all manufacturing more sustainable, we will get there. The important thing to remember is really that we need to develop all those new technologies, sustainable, circular, in parallel with improving the current technologies in terms of energy efficiency and carbon footprint. For example, there's still a very long way to go before we can make enough green hydrogen to replace all the gray one that we are using today. But in the meantime, we can use carbon capture to reduce the carbon emissions for the hydrogen that's been produced traditionally.
Oh, so on a daily basis, what sparks your interest today at Technip Energies? Like what projects are, keeping that young chemical process engineer spirits in your mind? What is bubbling up inside you? What gets you super excited to come to work?
It's really the idea that there's so much still to be discovered and developed. When I started studying chemical engineering, so that's more than 20 years ago, it was still, it seemed very far away. We knew that all the petrochemical-based technology were going to stop at some point. We know talking about how the oil and gas resources were
Right.
diminishing. But it seemed like, okay, we had time to get there. But now we are in the thick of it. And
Yeah.
there are so many new things that we want to work on. We get new inquiries, almost every day about, oh, we're thinking about trying to develop this technology. Can you help us? How can we do that? Is it feasible? Does it make sense? So there are really a lot of new possibilities that people can get into. And I think at Technip Energies, there's really this huge potential of turning small technologies that we are trying to develop into large-scale, innovative, and sustainable technologies that will be commercialized in the coming years.
Yeah. I've heard about SAF or Sustainable Aviation Fuel, but I don't know exactly what it is. So for the audience members like me who don't know what it is, could you explain it in the most simple way possible?
Sure. So the idea is that, cars, it's going to be
Right?
pretty easy to turn them all into electric cars, right? And the electricity, we can find sustainable ways to make it. So by wind or solar or hydrogen, like there are different ways to make sustainable electricity, and then you can transform the cars, and we know that's possible, that's already exists, right?
Hmm.
But electrifying planes is going to be a lot more difficult. Like it's really not that easy. You need a lot more autonomy.
Right.
And so that's not the path that people are looking for making aviation travel more sustainable. So the idea is to find ways to replace the fuels that are used now with more sustainable fuels. And there are different ways to do that. One way is to start from feedstocks that are sustainable. So maybe from corn or from byproducts
Oh,
of natural resources that we have, and transform them into fuels that can be used in the planes, either as is or with some transformations. And the other way to do that is also to make the fuels from electricity, and that's what we call power to X. So starting with electricity and hydrogen, and then making other chemicals that can be turned into fuels.
that's super cool. I guess I will feel less guilty about traveling, knowing that the airline that I'm using is using sustainable aviation fuel. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
we're getting
Wow.
there. We're getting there.
Yeah, and I think I'm watching this kind of metamorphosis of the social image of the engineering field in itself right now, especially through the power of social media and really great communication campaigns around STEM and topics like that. Do you feel or do you feel responsible to accelerate this reputation, this image with the role that you have now? I mean, you're placed as on a leadership role, obviously. Uh, very few women in your position, do you feel responsible to somehow represent and become a representation for women in your field?
I think it's everybody's responsibility to show young women that they belong in engineering or in any field that they want to get in, and that they can have successful technical careers. But yes, I hope that I can be an example to them in the same way that so many women and men have supported me and encouraged me during my career. Yes, it is possible to do it
Yeah.
as a woman. Yes.
Wow. So now to get a little bit off the work and the that you're doing now, Caroline, what was a boundary breaking moment for you? A moment that influenced your career journey or maybe even your personal journey, a moment that you think was the tipping point.
So I think it's really the fact that I like to travel, and I think I can thank my parents for that. They themselves like to travel and traveled with their children, and from a very early age, that gave me that interest in discovering new cultures and new countries and new ways of doing things. And I think that was really a determining moment for me. Um, for example, during my studies in France, I had the opportunity to be a part of the Erasmus program, which is a European program that allows students to study for 1 year in another European country. And I went to London to study biochemical engineering. And I discovered that even in engineering fields, very defined and structured, there are different ways of learning things and approaching problems. And for example, in France, we tend to be very theoretical and go back to the theory all the time. Whereas
Hmm.
in England, I found that they were more intuitive and trying to understand more broadly how things were working and the principles rather than really going back to the theory.
So what is your favorite memory traveling with your parents, and have you been able to replicate that as an adult?
My favorite memory of traveling with my parents, I think, must be when we went to Egypt. And I mean, that was wonderful. Discovering a new country, different cultures, the people there were really lovely. And also, if you think about it, the in terms of engineering, what they achieved at the time, like
Right.
4,000 years ago, the pyramids, the temples, it's really amazing.
Yeah.
Now with my children, yes, we do try to travel as well. We've been discovering the United States. There's so many things to discover here.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yes, the Grand Canyon,
Hmm.
and different cities. We went to New Orleans. We've been to Florida. So it's a great country to visit, and I hope I am giving them the same openness and curiosity about other cultures.
It's okay. I'll check 10 years down the line when I interview them for another podcast. And I'll ask them, what is your favorite memory about traveling with your mom? No, great. Do your kids actually know what you do for a living?
um, so it's hard. So they're 8 and 11.
Ah,
So I think chemistry, engineering is not that um, easy to explain to them.
no.
I kind of explain like it's like cooking. We mix things together and we make new things with them. They do already hear a lot about sustainability and recycling. So I can tell them that part of my job is to find new solutions in that area to make chemicals that have less of a negative impact on the environment, and also to find solutions to recycle plastics so that there is less waste.
Yeah. And do you want to somehow have some influence on what they choose to do in their future? I mean, your grandfather influenced you not knowing, but somehow ended up influencing you. Are you hoping that some of your experience rubs off on the kids and they are also kind of excited to contribute to a more sustainable future?
Yeah, and I think that generation will they'll have to embrace that anyway. But you have children, so you know that too. They have they already have their
Their
minds
mindset.
defined,
Yeah.
and I can tell that my daughter is a lot into biology, and my son is a lot into building and construction and things like that. So,
Yeah.
we'll see. We'll see.
On a lighter note now, what do you do on your free time?
Oh, uh, what free time? um, no, I really have this need to clear my head sometimes. I think better after that, actually, and sometimes engineering can be a lot of problem solving, and so
Hmm.
there's a lot of questions running in my head all the time. And so to clear my head, I really like to be outside, and in the winter that means going skiing. And I'm lucky then
Oh,
in the Boston area in New England we have good options to go skiing in the winter.
right.
And
Yeah.
in the summer it can be more like hiking, or I also in the summer I like to go back to France, see my family, make sure that my children discover friends as well. So that's also very important to me.
Are you into baseball at all? Because I know it's big in Boston.
Uh,
Yes, of course. Yes.
yes, of course.
Do you watch it actually?
I've been to a few games.
In the
Yes,
field.
it's actually kind of a very social experience.
Yes,
It's very interesting because it's very family friendly. So people go there with their
with the kids.
children,
Yeah.
and yeah, no, it's very nice. And then you get to talk and understand what's going on,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's
So
part of the being curious about new cultures, right?
exactly, exactly. And I mean, I guess if you live in Boston for this long, might as well embrace the baseball, right?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Caroline, for your time. It was really lovely getting to know you.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So, everyone, that is the episode. Thank you for listening today. And in the future, we'll have more episodes with other inspiring people at Technip Energies and conversations on how they broke boundaries to become successful by their own definition. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you soon.